chapter 17. So, before we start reading, I'd like to think back to chapter 16 yesterday. Dad, Kate, Kat, and Ted have just arrived at the London Eye, but what was their plan? Why were they there? How had they got to this point? Okay, chapter 17, Lightning Strikes. When we got there, it turned out as Dad said. The crowds around the London Eye were thinner than yesterday. A large tract of cumulonimbus clouds had rolled in. The area of low pressure was approaching. It was 990 millibars and falling, I estimated. Visibility was only fair. Getting tickets didn't take long. Soon we're in the line for the ramp up to the eye. We got to the point where we'd parted with Salim yesterday. A security man checked us over with a handheld machine like a giant bubble-blowing holder. Then we walked up the ramp. It was a zigzag, a back-to-front Z. We boarded the moving pod along with a group of 8 foreign teenagers and a tired-looking mum with a folded-up buggy, her baby and her 2 older boys. We began to rise. I counted how many we were as we moved anti-clockwise from 6 to 5. 14. I decided not to count the baby, as it was unable to walk around or look at the view, and because it was too small to remember the experience. Yesterday, in Salim's pod, I'd counted 21. I drifted over to the side of the pod where nobody else was standing. I watched the other passengers. They looked out, turned, chatted in quiet voices and clicked cameras. Kat came over and stood beside me. I did it, she whispered. Did what? I said. Shh. I dropped the film in at the chemist's. By the time we get back it'll be developed. I thought of the 18 shots of the back garden and 18 other shots, our last link to Salim. That is good, Kat. Dad joined us. What a view, he said. Look at how tiny the cars are. They're like abacus beads, Kat said, going left and right. I looked down, but I couldn't say I'd ever seen abacus beads like that. Dad pointed south. If you had binoculars, you would make out our street, maybe even our house. Typical, Kat said. You come up here just to see what stares you in the face every day. Dad laughed. I've never seen where we live from this vantage before. There's the barracks, looking almost handsome, if you'd imagine it cleaned up. Maybe, and there's Guy's Tower. And there's the shopping centre. You can see its red roof. Can we see the Houses of Parliament, Dad? Kat pulled him over to the other side of the pod. I took Dad's place at the southeast side and looked out, but without taking in what I was seeing. We got to 12 o'clock. Visibility decreased further. The Thames estuary dissolved into cloud. I thought of the Mary Celeste, a ghost ship with no crew sailing over the horizon. I thought of the last dodo dying on a remote rock. I thought of Lord Lucan standing on a cliff, deciding whether or not to throw himself off. I thought of the chains of gods, each having been created by the next, vanishing into infinity. The great vast void. I thought of the boy on the slab. The young boy with bruises and dirty fingernails. The boy who wasn't Salim. Where are you, Salim? I wondered. Then suddenly, it was as if I became Salim. I felt his laughing presence inside me, almost like a ghost. While I stood looking out, I tried imagining what he'd have done, alone among the strangers in the pod. Would he have chatted to somebody? Would he have stayed quietly in the corner? I divided it into 2, with the Ted half asking the Salim half what had happened. But the ghost of Salim, like the dodos, lords, and the crew of Mary Celeste, vanished before we'd reached 9 o'clock. An announcement came on from the speaker in the corner of the pod, suggesting that we all group together facing northeastwards towards the spiral staircase to pose for the souvenir photo. Shall we? Said Dad. Yes, let's, said Kat. Kat and Dad gathered on one side of the pod with the other passengers, while I stayed out at the edge, half posing, half looking at the others posing. The camera flashed, the pod came down. A young man with a London Eye t-shirt, a member of staff, stood at the door beckoning us to come out. The others filed out first. Dad and I were next, but Kat hung back, her eyes darting around. She crouched down by the seats, but the man came in and shooed her out, then picked up a piece of litter that the woman holding the baby had dropped and got him out himself. What was all that about? Dad said. I nearly said theory number 1, being disproved, but remembered how Mum had reacted to theory number 8. I thought I dropped something, Kat said. Well, shake a leg, Dad said. Shake a leg is Dad's favourite way of saying hurry up, although if you tried to run and shake a leg at the same time, you would fall over. Kat nudged me. We both realised the same thing at the same time. You couldn't stay on for another go. Exit, enter, exit, enter. It was a smooth operation. The way out led past the souvenir booth, close to where we'd said we'd meet Salim. There were several television-like screens with different shots of each passenger load. Our one was number 2903. There was Dad, there was Kat. There was the mum and her two boys and her baby. The teenage tourists were bunched around them, grinning and waving. You could only see my shoulder and ear sticking out on the right, behind everybody else. Ted's cut off and I look a fright, Dad said. But you look all right, Kat. Kat had her arms folded and her hair was tied in what girls call a top knot. Her skinny, bony face jutted out, with her tilted chin and dark eyebrows. She seemed sharper, somehow as if she was more in focus than other people around her, or more real. You couldn't help noticing it, whether you were looking for her or not. Maybe that's what being pretty meant, I thought. God, she said, my hair looks icky. Dad bought the shot anyway. Then we left the eye and walked along the river. The Thames was flat and brown. The pleasure boats cruised with hardly any passengers. You could hear aircraft, but not see them. The blanket of cloud grew thicker. I kept looking out for Salim. Whenever we passed a boy of his build with dark hair, I'd stare. But when we drew closer, it was never him. Dad stopped to look out across the water. He pointed out two cormorants that dipped and dived in the water, disappearing for ages, then reappearing 10 metres away from where they'd gone down. Is Salim like the cormorants, Dad? Sorry, Ted? Will he reappear eventually, like they do? Maybe not where he disappeared, but somewhere else. Dad didn't answer straight away. He looked downstream, with his lips turned up, which meant he was sad. Perhaps he was thinking of the boy on the slab, the boy who might have been Salim, but wasn't. I certainly hope Salim is like the cormorants, Ted. We crossed the river to the Embankment Gardens and had sandwiches in the park cafe. When we finished, we walked around the beds of colourful flowers. Then, just as I predicted that morning, a thunderstorm started. First rain dripped, then splattered. There was a thunderclap. The instability of the upper atmosphere erupted. I thought of theory number 5, spontaneous combustion. If thunder was possible, why not that? Good thing we're not on the eye now, Dad said. Lightning flashed. 10 seconds later it thundered again. Dad, I said, the storm is 3 kilometres away. Even if it was nearer, your chance of being struck is approximately 1 in 3 million. We dashed for the underground station. By now it was raining cats and dogs, which is the strangest expression of all, but my personal favourite. When I imagine cats and dogs coming from the sky, I see white fluffy kittens and Dalmatian puppies. Then it turned to hail. The lightning and thunder were 4 seconds apart. 1,200 metres, I said. And it is sheet lightning, which means, shut up, Ted, Kat said. She had her jacket collar up over her head. I'm soaked. Dad looked at his watch. 3 o'clock. No calls on the mobile, so no news. Let's go home, Kat said. It's too wet to stay out. Okay, Kat, we'll call it a day. We went down into the underground. By the time we were back up on street level, the storm had moved away. The rain had stopped. The pavements ran with moisture. It was a very localised storm system, I said. Dad, said Kat, do you mind if we stop by the shopping centre again? I want to get a present for Aunt Glo. Some bath oil to help her relax. Dad's lips went right up. That's a great idea, kitten. We waited as Kat went into the chemist again. She emerged with a plastic bottle of syrupy raspberry-coloured liquid. Dad unscrewed the lid, smelled it, and crinkled up his nose. This meant he didn't think it smelled pleasant, but what he said was, it should do nicely. What he didn't see, but I did, was the top of a wallet of newly processed photos, bulging from the pocket of Kat's fur-collared jacket. Okay, so I'd like you to have a think. I'd like you to pause there and think about what that could be. What do you think that they're going to find in these pictures? I'd like you to think about making a bit of a prediction, please. What are they going to find when they look at these pictures?